there is no light without the dark, and no one knows that better than Bryanna Burkhart. She's the host of Shadow Light Podcast. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us about the catalyst for starting your program.
Oh gosh, I think there were so many catalysts, so many little moments that led into this big moment of starting the podcast. I started the podcast in a place where I had quit my legal job, put all my stuff in storage, and moved to Dallas to live with a friend who was letting me stay with him for free, and just kind of figuring out how to pick up the pieces of me. And that was where this idea for the podcast came. Was I had felt like for so long there were so many things I couldn't talk about, or people didn't want to go there in a lot of different ways, and I just wanted to have a space where I could talk about any of those things and where I could find other people that wanted to talk about those things.
Right. The conscious conversation, I remember years ago feeling like it was off limits some places and then here, and then for me I made a shift where it's like, this is who I am, and I came out of the spiritual closet and I was like, I'm just having a conscious conversation everywhere I go.
Right.
So what does that look like for you? Has it evolved into your whole life, or is it still, do you keep it separate in some areas?
So I mean, it has evolved. I don't know what it looks like. I think it just looks like just being willing to have a conversation and just being willing to be there with whatever you're in that moment. I guess part of the other contrast of when I was in the law is I went to law school to work in mental health advocacy. So during the day, I was in mental institutions and prisons and disability centers with people who grew up in poverty, and they were in really, really dark places, and they really had a lot of cards stacked against them. And then at night I was going home and reading these like spiritual readings and these new age books and like, just think positive thoughts and your life will change. And it felt really shallow in a lot of ways. And there was a lot of contrast between these two worlds. And I was struggling with my own mental health. And so it just, I guess it looks like just talking about it and being willing to always change and be available for whatever's there in that moment.
So do you believe that if somebody comes and they're kind of born into a rough situation and they have cards stacked against them, do you believe that do you believe it's possible for them to overcome all that?
Yes. And it doesn't come from jumping straight to the light, right? Like you get in a car, you don't go 0 to 60 in a second. It takes a progression of getting to a place.
I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions and why people so quickly renounce becoming woke or being awakened.
Right.
Because they can manifest for a day and they wake up and their life has not changed. But the way people can talk it or preach it, it sounds instant.
Right. Because that sells.
You make that decision that your life will change. Well, you wake up and it hasn't. Then what?
Right. And that's where the being present and just being available for the dance comes into play, because I mean, sometimes days are really great and sometimes they really suck, and knowing that both the shadow and the light exist in each of those moments, and that sometimes the brightest lights come from being in those darkest places. I mean, we hear so many stories of people that grow out of incredible situations and, poverty and abuse, and how did they do it? What makes them different than somebody else? A lot of times it's just they kept showing up and they just kept doing it and they kept believing that there was the next step. So it might not look like tomorrow my dream life might not look like making $10 million. Maybe tomorrow my dream life looks like not getting in a fight with my husband or, not going to that job I hated, or like, what's the next step? What's neutral? What can bring us to this place of like, it feels good, but it's not so overwhelming and so out of reach that it becomes separate from us.
It's fantastic. And you make such a great point around the presence, because one of the insights that I experienced along the way was that I could be having a great day and something would go wrong, and then everything felt terrible, or just the opposite.
Right.
The whole day could be terrible, and then all of a sudden I have a really phenomenal moment. And from that I just discovered, oh my gosh, I'm always just one thought away from perfect peace or presence or love. What techniques, tips, tricks have you discovered, or even authors or teachers, that have been most helpful for you in either staying present or just evolving in terms of consciousness?
Yeah, definitely meditation. That was a starting point. And I actually don't meditate traditionally now. Like I don't sit and have a meditative practice, but I've meditated so much in the past that I've gotten to a point now where I'm like, I feel like I'm meditating when I'm on a walk. I feel like I'm meditating right now.
It's abiding in the self.
It is. It's that presence. And that was my tool of getting there. And now it feels, right now at least, I might change my mind in the future, but right now it feels restrictive for me to sit and meditate. But that was a big tool to get into the present place. And also I loved what you mentioned at the beginning of the show of knowing that you are consciousness and knowing that you are the observer, not the observed. And so that, I know that's kind of far-fetched for people when you're just getting started, but just having that thought, I keep coming back to that. When I was starting, just coming back to that of like, wait, is this really me, or am I just watching this show?
So you're no longer in your old field, or you are? Do people work with you one-on-one?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I have clients. I coach.
Nice, beautiful.
Yeah.
What themes do you most enjoy addressing with people?
I mean, obviously the shadow work, I love all of that. So right now, I recently switched just my interest area and have started working more with people who are high functioning and have really created the life of their passion, or they've really, they finished law school or graduate school, or they've been into a career that they thought was like the thing that they wanted to do, but they're still missing something. They're still not quite there. They're still not feeling that like purpose. So they have the passion and not the purpose. And then they're confused because it's like, well, I followed my passion. I did all the things I was supposed to do. I have the job, the relationship, all the things. What's next? What's missing? So lately, that's been my favorite people to work with, because it's like you can really dig into the self then, and you can really dig into the inquiry of who you are, who you want to be, what you want to do, and find your deep purpose and what really lights you up and what becomes the flow for you.
What would you say to people who are scared of doing that shadow work?
It's scary. So just to let it be scary. It's okay to be scary. Yeah.
And haven't you found too that it's like anything else in life? Like I had fears of not having money at some point in my time, like really afraid, like, oh my gosh, what if I'm homeless? Or what happens if I get sick? And that once you have the experience, that it's nothing relative to the fear in your head, that your mind always makes life out to be a lot better or a lot worse than is in reality.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. I mean, and then you're worrying about something that's not actually present and it's not actually happening. It goes back to the being present. Like, where am I actually right now? What's actually happening right now? And then also the knowing, am I actually in what's happening, or am I just watching what's happening?
Beautiful.
Well, tell people where they can follow you and work with you.
Yeah. On my podcast, Shadow Light. And then my website is BryannaD.com. And my Instagram is Bryanna Saying Things. I'm always saying
I
things.
love all the things you're saying. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more on Good Morning La La Land.